Not every woman smiles on her birthday. Some, when blowing out the candles, feel a knot in their throat, not from lack of air, but from lack of meaning. There's something about this date that seems to expose the emptiness time couldn't fill. For those who have lived through absences, a birthday isn't about celebrating life, it's about remembering everything she tried to build that somehow fell apart along the way. Every happy birthday she receives sounds like a reminder of everything that didn't happen, of all the plans left in drawers, of the loves that promised to stay but left before she could learn to trust. It's strange because on the outside, everything seems normal. People say happy birthday with smiles, hugs, and cakes. But inside, there's a silence that screams. It's the silence of promises she made to herself but couldn't keep. The silence of waiting that repeats year after year, when she realizes no one has ever truly seen her. It's the silence of a loneliness that doesn't depend on the presence of others, but on the absence of a true encounter with herself. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." And perhaps that's exactly what birthdays bring, an involuntary invitation to look within. Because as time passes, the mirror no longer reflects just appearances. It reveals untold stories, unhealed wounds, and versions of herself still waiting to be embraced. And in that gaze lies both pain and the chance to begin again. Some women don't like celebrating their birthdays because at some point, they understood that growing up also means losing. It means letting go of what once mattered. It means accepting that not every dream blooms, not every love remains, and not every path leads where we imagined. It's a silent mourning, not for the past itself, but for the woman she was before she learned the weight of life. But there's beauty in that too, because the date that once represented pain can, with time, become reconciliation. A birthday can stop being a reminder of what was missing and become a symbol of what can still be born. It doesn't have to be a party. It can be a moment of pause, a deep breath, a reunion with her own heart. And if you're hearing this now, maybe this video is your gift. Not one wrapped in colorful paper, but in truth. Because maybe today, what you need most isn't for someone to say happy birthday, but for someone to say, I know it hurts sometimes, but you're still here. And that's already a victory. If this message speaks to you, if at some point in your life this date made you cry in silence, then this video is for you. Stay with me until the end. Maybe together we can discover a new way to celebrate life, one that doesn't hurt, but heals. If you can, like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps this message reach other women who, like you, also need to be reminded that they are not alone. Some birthdays hurt more than others, not because something terrible happened that day, but because nothing did. No expected message arrived, no phone call came, and the silence turned into a painful mirror. It's in those moments that loneliness finds its voice, a voice that whispers, once again, no one remembered. And the worst part is, it's not just about the absence of others. It's about how invisible she felt even after trying so hard to be seen. When a woman spends her life giving, being strong, being the foundation, it's natural for her to hope that at least one day a year she'll be recognized, that someone will notice how much she held together what was falling apart, that someone will say, I see you. But often that recognition never comes. And so, instead of a celebration, her birthday becomes a cruel reminder that the world keeps moving even when she feels stuck in time. There's something deeply profound about the loneliness that comes from waiting, because it doesn't come from nowhere. It feeds on memories from that childhood where no one noticed when she cried, from that day she planned everything to celebrate and people arrived late, distracted, or too busy, from that relationship where her partner remembered the date but forgot about her, small pains that pile up, and when her birthday arrives, they all return at once. Carl Jung once said, what we do not confront within ourselves returns as fate. And perhaps that's what happens with birthdays. They're not the problem, they're the mirror. They reveal symbolically all the time she felt alone, even when surrounded by others. And that's why so many women avoid celebrating, because deep down, it's not about the party that's missing. It's about the love that never came. But there's a turning point here, Because when this woman begins to understand that the acknowledgement she longed for will never come from outside, something within her awakens. In that awakening, a new awareness is born, that she can be her own reminder, that she can be the one who comforts herself, embraces herself, celebrates herself, not out of duty, but out of worthiness. And maybe that's where the meaning of a birthday shifts. It stops being the day she realizes who forgot her and becomes the day she remembers herself. Because the truest happy birthday doesn't come from others. It comes from the heart that, even tired, still chooses to beat. If this message resonates with you, leave a comment saying, "I saw myself in this silence." That way other women will know they're not alone in feeling this way too. There's a silent moment on a birthday when the mirror seems to speak, and it doesn't talk about the time that has passed, it talks about the time that never came back, about the plans left unfinished, the dreams postponed, the loves that didn't last. Many women look at their reflection on that day and feel, even if they don't say it out loud, a pang of sadness. I thought that by this age, my life would be different. From an early age, society whispers an invisible checklist of milestones every woman is supposed to reach. Get married by a certain age, have children, be emotionally stable, successful, beautiful, balanced. And when the birthday arrives, it's as if this symbolic clock goes off, a cruel reminder of what hasn't been achieved yet, and worse, of what may never be. But the sense of failure so many women feel isn't real. It's a collective illusion, an emotional trap built on comparisons and expectations that don't come from the soul, but from the fear of not belonging. Because the truth is, time doesn't judge. It's the wounded ego that does. The inner child who grew up believing she'd only be worthy if she became everything others expected her to be. Carl Jung once said that life really begins at 40, when you free yourself from the need to please others. And that's what a birthday can symbolize when seen with awareness. Not the end of a cycle, but the beginning of a rebirth, a new phase in which a woman stops measuring her life by the goals she hasn't reached and begins to see herself through the wisdom she's gained along the way. Perhaps what truly hurts isn't aging. It's realizing that for so long, she lived trying to prove her worth and still didn't feel enough. That's the feeling that turns a birthday into an uncomfortable mirror. But even in that discomfort, there's beauty, because discomfort is an invitation to change the way she looks at herself. And when this woman understands that aging isn't losing time, but gaining awareness, something inside her realigns. She starts to see what really matters, the small victories no one notices, the silent battles she fought alone, the strength of having survived what she once thought she couldn't. Then a birthday stops being the count of years gone by and becomes a recognition of how much she's evolved, even without realizing it. Because maybe true success is just that, still standing, even when life didn't go as planned. If you've ever felt like you were running late for your own life, write in the comments, "Today I choose to make peace with my time," because that's the first step toward turning your birthday into a symbol of self-love, not self-judgment. There are women who can't blow out their birthday candles with ease, not because they dislike birthdays, but because every happy birthday sounds like a silent question. What exactly am I celebrating? When the heart carries old marks of abandonment, rejection, and invisibility, celebrating one's own life can feel heavy, because deep down, there's still a part of her that doesn't believe she's worthy of being celebrated. From an early age, many were taught that love came with conditions, that affection was a form of exchange, that being loved depended on always being available, smiling, understanding, strong. They were shaped to care for others, but never learned how to care for themselves. And that's where helplessness takes root, when instead of receiving, she gets used to giving until she's completely emptied. So when her birthday comes, it awakens that memory of neglect. It reminds her of the years she longed to be seen and wasn't, of the times she tried so hard to please and still didn't feel enough. It's as if every happy birthday echoes inside an old emptiness, an echo from a childhood where no one ever asked how she was truly feeling. Carl Jung once said, "What is not brought to consciousness comes to us as fate." And perhaps that's why, for some women, a birthday isn't just a date. It's a mirror. It reflects the distance between the life she lived and the one she deserved, between the love she gave and the love she never received, between who she was and who, deep down, she still wishes to become. But it's also in that mirror that healing begins, because the awareness of abandonment doesn't have to be the ending. It can be the beginning of rebuilding. Celebrating one's own birth for someone marked by lack is an act of courage. It's saying, even if I wasn't cared for the way I deserved, today I choose to care for myself. It's allowing oneself to be reborn, this time by choice, not by chance. And it's remarkable how that choice changes everything. When a woman begins to see her birthday not as pressure, but as an invitation, something inside her shifts. She starts to realize that the love she's always searched for in others, in people, in gestures, in promises, can begin to grow within her, slowly, gently, with presence. The celebration then stops being a crowded party and becomes an intimate encounter with her own soul. A moment when she allows herself to acknowledge, I am alive, I survived, and that alone is reason enough to celebrate. If this part of the video spoke to you, leave a comment saying, "Today, I choose to embrace myself." Your words might become the first symbolic gesture of this new kind of celebration, the celebration of the love that finally begins to bloom within you. There are women who carry the weight of being everyone's foundation. They're the ones who, from an early age, learned to hold back their own tears so they could wipe away someone else's. Always available, present, and capable. The ones who said, "I'm fine," even when their hearts were in ruins. Over time, this habit of caring became their identity. Being the pillar turned into destiny, and the idea of being cared for began to feel almost like a luxury, something meant for others, not for them. On their birthday, this silent dynamic becomes undeniable because it's on that day, when love should flow toward them, that the absence feels heaviest. The woman who spent her whole life serving, comforting, and giving doesn't know what to do when no one comes. She doesn't know how to face the emptiness. And often, she doesn't even know what to ask for, because she was taught that needing is weakness, that depending is dangerous, that deserving is vanity. Carl Jung once said, "What we resist persists." And when we resist receiving, we keep the emptiness alive. What started as emotional absence becomes a way of living. She gives, gives, and gives, and deep down feels a void that nothing fills. Because love isn't just giving. It's flow, it's exchange, it's movement between two whole hearts, not between one that serves and another that only takes. But how can she receive when her whole body has learned to survive without it? How can she open herself to love when life taught her that opening up meant getting hurt? The answer, though painful, is simple. By starting small. Receiving isn't just about accepting gestures from others. It's about accepting one's own humanity. It's allowing herself to rest without guilt, to cry without explanation, to ask for help without shame. It's understanding that being worthy of love has nothing to do with merit and everything to do with existence. The woman who has spent her life caring for others must, at some point, learn to care for herself. She needs to rediscover the meaning of comfort, not as something that weakens, but as something that restores. And perhaps the first gesture of true self-care is this: to stop waiting for others to see her and begin to truly see herself. Because when she looks at herself with tenderness, the world slowly begins to respond in the same frequency. That's when exhaustion gives way to calm, when the fear of needing dissolves into the permission to be cared for, when love stops being a one-way road and becomes a dance, one where she finally learns to receive what she's always given. If you see yourself in this woman who gives until she's empty, take a deep breath right now and tell yourself, I also deserve rest. I also deserve love. Write it in the comments, not as a random mantra, but as a commitment to your own heart. There are women who've learned to protect themselves from emptiness by keeping their distance from what once hurt them, who prefer silence over risking hope again, only to be forgotten once more. Because when disappointment repeats itself, it doesn't just hurt, it dismantles something inside. And over time, a body that has waited too long begins to close. A soul that once opened in hope begins to retreat into self-protection. For many, birthdays are a mirror of that fear. It's the day when the heart splits between the desire to be remembered and the fear that the forgetting will happen again. She says she doesn't care, that she doesn't want a party, that it's just another day. But deep down, there's a part of her that still longs for an unexpected hug, a sincere message, a look that says, "I remember you." Only the fear speaks louder. And so she silences her own desire just to avoid being hurt again. Carl Jung once said, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And the fear of disappointment is often part of that darkness that needs to be seen. Because fear, when ignored, becomes a prison. It keeps love from arriving, affection from entering, and connection from happening. And ironically, the very thing she fears most, loneliness, is what she ends up recreating and trying to protect herself from it. When she avoids celebrating, she also avoids allowing herself to live. She stays in a safe space, but it's sterile. No pain, but no spark either. And the silence that began as a shield becomes a wall that separates her from herself and from the love that could come if only she let it. But it's possible to break this cycle, and it doesn't have to start with a grand gesture. Sometimes it's as simple as this: a small cake she buys for herself, a candle lit in silence, a quiet sentence spoken aloud. "I exist," and that alone is reason enough to celebrate, because self-love begins right there, in the moment she stops waiting and starts offering herself what she's always wanted to receive. To celebrate oneself isn't to deny the pain of disappointment, but to transform it into wisdom. It's looking at the past and saying, "Yes, it hurt, but I'm still here." It's recognizing that the love that was missing doesn't define the love that's yet to come. It's understanding that every time she silences herself to avoid pain, she also blocks her heart from being touched again. Silence can be a refuge, but it doesn't have to be a home. It can be a pause, but it doesn't have to be an ending. There's a time when protecting yourself is necessary, but there also comes a time when allowing yourself to feel is what truly heals. And that moment begins when she realizes that the memory of what was missing only hurts because her heart is still waiting for someone else to fill it. When she decides to become the presence she's been longing for, the fear begins to fade. Now I ask you, how long have you been choosing silence to avoid disappointment? Write it in the comments if you'd like. Sometimes writing is the first step toward reopening your heart. With time, she learns that a birthday doesn't have to be a party. It just needs to be an encounter, a quiet, honest, and profound meeting between who she was and who she's becoming. It doesn't need balloons or people around. Sometimes the real gift is the time she allows herself to simply be, without masking the pain or justifying the exhaustion. It's in that moment she realizes a birthday isn't a day to please others, but a space to acknowledge everything she survived. Carl Jung once said that the journey of individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are. And that, deep down, is what every birthday symbolizes: a return to oneself, a reminder that she is a living story, made of difficult chapters, but also of silent triumphs, that there is a strength that sustained her when no one else did, and that this strength deserves to be honored, even in simple ways, even if it's just with a deeper breath in front of the mirror. A birthday, then, stops being about the time that has passed and becomes about the time that still remains, the time to choose differently, to rewrite her own story, to forgive herself for not being who others expected, and to celebrate who she is, despite it all. It's not about erasing the pain, but about recognizing it as part of the path, because every tear, every absence, every silence also shaped her. And maybe one day she'll realize that what hurt the most wasn't the absence of those who didn't show up, but the forgetting of herself. And in that awakening, she begins to remember the light laughter she once had when she believed, the strength she always carried, even without noticing, the love that never stopped existing within her. It was only asleep, waiting for the right moment to be reborn. So when her next birthday comes, may she not fear the day. May she welcome it. May she look at herself and say, I don't need applause. I don't need anyone's presence. I only need truth. And in that truth, she might find what she's always searched for in others, belonging. Because celebrating one's own life is an act of courage. It's telling the universe, I'm still here. It's recognizing that even wounded, she remains whole enough to begin again. And beginning again is always the greatest gift the soul can receive.